Hey friends, welcome or welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Bridget and I make home and DIY content here on YouTube. I've got a few super easy projects in store for you that I can't wait to share, but before we jump into them, I'd love to have you become an official member of the By Bridget YouTube fam by hitting the subscribe button below and ringing the bell to stay in the loop. And if you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. Now let's talk DIYs. As some of you may know, my husband and I share our apartment with our two cats, Brisket and Brioche. Any pet owner knows that sometimes it can be tricky to have a beautiful home that fits your needs as well as those of your pet. So in today's video, I'll be redoing the corner of our bedroom that we've affectionately named the cat playground. I've got two very simple DIYs that will really elevate the look of the space, so let's get started. Okay, so this is what we currently affectionately call the cat jungle gym. I have not touched it up at all, so you will see it in its true and raw form. There are some bits of cardboard here from these loungers sharpening posts that they love. Sorry about the focus. And there's cat fur all over here. We built this kind of pole setup thing so they can climb, jump around. They can sharpen their claws. As you can see, they have done that. We got a few cat beds we're kind of just storing in here. Again, a few cat toys we're kind of storing. It is not the best. We've got just a blanket down there and another bed. But they have been really loving it, and so we wanted to create something else for them that would look a lot nicer, but that they could still kind of climb around on and really enjoy. For our first project, I'll be creating some sturdy, wall-mounted cat beds using materials that are very easy to come by. Let me show you how it's done. I'm starting off this DIY by removing the handles from a large, very sturdy wicker basket. Mine took a little bit of work, but if you have good utility scissors, it should be a piece of cake. You'll want to make sure the size of your basket is comfortable for your cat to lounge in when mounted sideways on the wall. So I got a pretty big one for Brisket and a slightly smaller one for Brioche. When the handles are removed, it's time to add in the mounting hardware. I'm using 3 large washers along with my screws to spread out the tension and offer more support when mounted on the wall. All I'm doing here is poking the end of each screw between the slats in the wicker and twisting it a little by hand so that it just barely pokes through the underside of the basket. I got a little creative here, and I'm using a piece of cardboard behind the basket so that I can twist the screws a bit more and get puncture marks in the cardboard that are a perfect template of my screw holes. This is what I'll use to mark the wall for drilling. And here's a quick view of the 3 marks up close. When I've decided where I want to mount my basket, I'm using painter's tape to hold the cardboard onto the wall and then taking a nail and tapping it lightly through the cardboard holes to mark the wall. Now I can remove the cardboard and pre-drill holes in the wall for my drywall anchors and eventually my screws. With the anchors in place, I'm ready to begin screwing the basket onto the wall. When working with multiple screws, especially long ones like these, I always recommend alternating between them, screwing a little at a time to keep everything even and snug and to allow for slight adjustments as needed. Now it's time for the finishing touches. I'm using plush infant blankets in the bottom of each basket to make them extra comfy for my cats because yes, they're my babies and they deserve the best. I'm also going in here with some brown paint just to cover up those ugly washers and screws and make everything blend together a little better. A few coats of paint later, and this is the finished result. I already think this is a huge upgrade from our old setup, and it's no longer an eyesore that I see every time I enter the bedroom. I'm sure all cat owners can relate to the struggle of getting your cats to cooperate and act interested on camera, so enjoy this very authentic footage of Brioche immediately hopping out to find a cardboard box instead. With the help of a little catnip spray and the lure of treats, the cats definitely seemed more interested in the baskets, or at least in climbing partway into them to get their snack. Go figure. I'm confident that with time they'll get the right idea. After testing the baskets out for a day, I did decide to make one small alteration to the design by adding in a few of these $2 shelf brackets into the wall to offer more support and keep the baskets from creaking when the cats jump into them. As you can see, the screws go into the wall only, not the baskets themselves. Our second project is a little more unique since it started off as a thrifted banana holder. If you're wondering how on earth it fits into a YouTube video on cat DIY projects, keep watching. I promise the end result is worth it. So here's the piece as I found it at the thrift store. I wasn't a fan of the stain color on the base, so my first step is removing the metal arm and then using 220 grit sandpaper on my orbital sander to get it back down to the original wood color. Normally I wouldn't do this indoors, but it was very rainy outside and this was a small, quick project, so it wasn't a lot of cleanup. I really love the natural wood and it took no time at all to sand down the top and sides. I still wanted to protect the wood and add a little depth to the grain, so instead of staining it, I'm actually just using some wood conditioner to even everything out. You can apply this with a brush if you'd like, but I like the control I get by using a shop towel instead. After about 15 minutes, it's ready to be sealed with a one-coat polyurethane in a satin finish. I'm making sure my brush strokes go with the grain during this step, and don't worry about the dark spots around the screw holes, they'll be covered by the metal arm. While the base dries, I'm going to be creating a macrame dangle toy that will hang from the top loop as seen here. I'm starting by taping down my center cord with a loop at the top. This piece was only a couple feet long. Then I'm using up scraps from previous macrame projects and cutting them into about 10-inch strips and folding them in half. I'll need 2 strips per knot. The knot I'm using is very simple. All you need to do is lay one loop over top your center cords and then feed the other loop down through the first one and under the center cords before pulling the first loop's cord's tails down through the second loop. It sounds more complicated than it actually is, so I'll let you watch it a few times as I continue the process, alternating between natural macrame and black dyed macrame. You can also achieve the same knot by putting your first loop under the center cords and putting your second one over them. For whatever reason, this method seemed to work faster for me, so I switched to using it as I continued down my project. The end goal is for this toy to roughly resemble a feather, so I'm adding cords until I like the overall length. You'll also notice that I'm alternating my first loop back and forth from the left to the right every time I switch between the 2 colors of macrame cord. This is a personal preference, but I like the way it keeps everything flat and even. To get the feather shape I'm going for, I'm trimming the excess macrame cord off of each side so that it ends up looking a bit like a trapezoid. Then I'm unwinding each cord into its 3 separate strands to make the toy fuller and fluffier. I love how the dyed macrame has a slightly speckled look when unwound. When everything's unwound, I'm brushing through it to clean it up a bit and flatten it so that it's easier to touch up the edges with my scissors and get that nice feather shape. At this point, I can remove the tape and set it aside while I reattach the metal arm back onto the now dry wooden base. Now I'm ready to attach the toy to the metal arm. You'll notice that I left a decently large loop at the top of the macrame. This is so that I can fit the bulky toy completely through it and pull it tight. I'm giving it one last brush through to make it look its best before I let the cats have at it. I've had this banana holder in my thrift stash for no joke about 2 years. I knew I could DIY it into something interesting, but until now I didn't know exactly what it would become. My favorite thing about this DIY is that it's a fantastic way to use up macrame scraps from previous projects that would otherwise get thrown away. Now it's time to bring in the real critics, starting with Brioche. As usual, she's interested but apprehensive. Nothing new there. Brisket, however, was a little more into it thanks to the catnip spray. He even bestowed his blessing upon it with a head bump. And while we're at it, why not give this basket bed another rub, for good measure? Overall, I'd call these two DIYs a success, and if you'd like to see how Brisket and Brioche warm up to them, follow along for updates on my Instagram, linked in the description. Thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope you got some new inspo for how to create pet-friendly spaces in your home without compromising on style. For you cat owners out there, comment below which of these projects you'd like to incorporate into your home. And as always, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and maybe share it with your cat-loving friends. See you next time!